they like admit in this story that they don't know what they're doing. So how the fuck did you fix him so fast then? I just think that's flawed. I think that's a little flawed. I don't know. What's up, people? Happy New Year. I hope 2023 was an amazing year for all of you, and I hope 2024 is an even better year in store for you. I'll be honest though, 2023, if you might have guessed, was a little bit hectic for me. Nothing bad, nothing serious, obviously, but I did have to step away from this channel, and if you're a subscriber to this channel, you know and expect Miles Morales comic book reacts every single month, and other content just like that. Unfortunately though, I did have to stop. Life just gets in the way sometimes, and I'm sorry about that, but believe me, I miss this channel probably even more than any of you did, to be honest. Like, I miss doing this so much, which is why I'm so happy to be here right now, finally back with you all. So what we're going to do today for you to make up for all the time that I missed is we are going to do a Miles Morales 2023 year in review. Comic books only. We're not going to do the movies or anything else or the video games. And plus there's content right here on this channel about the movies and of course other comic book issues, which we will be talking about. I'm going to be glossing over issues 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Cody Ziglar's run. If you've seen those, great. If not, there is going to be a playlist in the top corner where you can find all the reacts to all those issues in full depth. We're just going to kind of touch on what happened there, kind of look and see what Cody Ziglar has been building. As well, of course, we're going to be talking about the tie-ins with Carnage Reigns. Now, you're going to learn something about me today, right here, right now. And that is that I don't really like any of the symbiotes, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, I really don't like any of them, and I especially don't like the red goo guy. Yeah, that's right, Carnage specifically. If anything, he is probably one of the main characters I think that gets way too many issues, way too much like stories and money put into him, obviously because he's got an ongoing right now. To me, he's just like a very he just kind of looks cool. Like, if we're just being honest about it, he's like a silly serial killer that does stuff, and it's like, you know, that can be cool, and obviously if you're into comics for strictly the art, cool. Like, not hating or anything like that. Just for me, like, Carnage is kind of boring. Like, there's really not a lot to him. I know some of you are probably thinking to yourselves, Jeff, why are you trashing Carnage when you're about to talk about and react to a bunch of his stories? Well, the answer to that question is I'm always going to be honest and transparent with you. I think anybody who subscribed to this channel knows that. You guys know that I'm going to give you my honest opinion, whether you like it or don't like it. Always open for discussion, of course, in the comments below. But yeah, I don't really like Carnage, like, at all. And I was pretty bummed out that Miles was going to get tied up with this because that's what always happens to him. I mean, he's a popular character, of course. He's one of the most popular characters right now in all of comics. I mean, all of, I guess, like superhero-based content in general right now, which is, you know, I'm happy for that. But unfortunately, you have to get some of these tie-ins. But regardless, I think it should be a fun ride anyway. And if you're like me, you're really going to enjoy the stuff I'm going to be talking about in this issue. So, without further ado, of course, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more comic book content just like this, and so that way I don't have to go away for as long, and you, of course, will be making someone's dream come true. And all it costs you is exactly nothing. Just clicking the like button, clicking the subscribe button, and so on. So, now finally, after all that is said and done, let's get started with Miles 2023 year in review. And as I said, we are starting off with issue number 1 of Cody Ziglar's Spider-Man Miles Morales. Miles is back in his original red costume, and we are introduced to Reneem, and it's a very good intro to the character. Scorpion is attacking an armored car running through the streets of Brooklyn as Miles swoops in and saves Reneem. Some amazing action panels from Federico Vincentini here, of course, and Ziglar introduces another character shortly after that, Agent Gao, who is, I guess unsurprisingly, not a fan of superheroes and is presented to be another thorn in Miles' side. And it's just one thing after another, as we can't forget Miles is, of course, a kid in school, trying to balance his normal responsibilities with his superhero responsibilities. Ziglar used his first issue to set up some of the themes he was trying to tell. The weight and pressure of Miles' life is crashing down on him, and he's starting to feel like he can't get a moment to catch his breath in life. And just after a conversation with his parents, Miles takes this out on Bumbler, who will become a little bit more important later on in the story. And the issue ends with Reneem revealing that she knows Miles, including his secret identity as Spider-Man, and apparently has a vendetta against him. Alright, quick and easy enough? Perfect. Let's go on to issue 2. Oh, and by the way, Cody Ziglar isn't done establishing all the responsibilities that Miles has in his life that he hasn't exactly been living up to. We of course can't forget his relationship with his girlfriend Tiana Toombs, aka Starling. She, like Genki and others, also notices that he hasn't really been present in their lives, and she's pissed. Skipping forward a little bit, Miles goes out as Spider-Man looking into where Bumbler got his new upgrades and finds Misty Knight already on the case at the scene. Miles realizes he can help Misty find out more since he has the most familiarity with Bumbler. Misty gives him some important guidance in this issue, and I think some much needed distinction between heroes like herself and Miles and heroes like, say, Captain America, Steve Rogers, and Peter Parker. And all of a sudden they have to get into action as Scorpion is already free and hunting down Miles. But this issue ends as Tiana, waiting for Miles to show up for a date, gets ambushed and knocked unconscious by Rabble, the new villain in Miles' Rogues Gallery that Cody Ziglar is introducing. But Ziglar is not shy in hiding the fact that Rabble is of course Reneem. And of course there isn't really any reason to hide this at all. Cody Ziglar had already pretty well established Reneem was going to be a threat in Miles' life, so there's no reason to keep her identity a secret either. Now we're into issue 3, where it's all about Reneem's origin story to start things off. It's all about her why, her purpose, what she's doing this all for. Now, as I said, we're going to be glossing over this a little bit. I'm going to give you the main key points here, but in this specific react a couple months ago, I went into a lot more detail about this, and I had a lot more to say about this issue in general, about Reneem's character, and a little prediction that I may have gotten right. I'm not bragging or anything, I'm just sick of predictions. But anyway, if you do want to watch the video and the others, you can just click the top left-hand corner and it'll get you to the reaction of issue number 3. But without further ado, let's just keep it rolling. Reneem is the daughter of Jordanian immigrants who had dreams of coming to America for a better life, and then tragedy struck. Reneem did have a gift that allowed her to communicate with technology, but of course, as most impoverished people, her and her family struggled and was in need for a little bit of help, a little bit of luck. But that luck would not come to her. Instead, it would go to another kid in Brooklyn. That, of course, was Miles Morales. And, you know, the other couple of kids that got into Brooklyn Visions over Reneem, not just Miles. Reneem apparently is just in banana land and only thinks that she should be just taking this out on Miles for what the system did to her. But whatever, let's just keep rolling. As Reneem finishes up her story to Starling, who she's holding captive, Starling tries to give her a dose of reality. Meanwhile, Misty and Miles are dealing with Scorpion before Agent Gao comes in to undermine their word. And quickly after that, Genki frantically starts calling Miles because he is being chased. At the end, there's this big confrontation between Miles and Rabble, which kind of doesn't hit. I did mention that in the last review, and it's just kind of like, the thing is that, like I said at the beginning of this, we already know Reneem, we already know Rabble. So like, yes, it's intense for Miles because this person's been kind of messing with him this whole time and he finally sees them face to face. But for us, like the reader who this is realistically targeted for, I feel like we don't feel any of this weight. It feels like it should be a much bigger reveal, and you know, it's kind of not, because we already, like, this whole story has been about Reneem essentially, which I'm cool with, but like, you can't set it up this way. Minor thing, but I just thought it was kind of silly. Good thing we don't have to wait for this confrontation, because now we're into issue number 4. Rabble does some villain monologuing as she kicks Miles' ass from pillar to post at the start of this issue, and our Spider-Man looks very out of his depth at this point. Misty saves Miles from the river and tries to convince him to go into this with a plan, but this is super hard for him to hear at this point, right? All he's heard and felt from his loved ones is that he's been failing them at every single turn. Now, the last group of people Rabble needs to capture is, of course, Miles' family, his mom, his dad, and his baby sister Billy. Before he can get to them, once again, Rabble is a step ahead of him, and his home has been destroyed, and his family is dead. I'm kidding, obviously they're not dead. Come on, this is comics, no one dies. No one actually is ever dead. But this, issue 5, this is the end of our story. Our Spider-Man has been beaten, battered, and bruised. It is the final confrontation. Reneem is about to take everything away from him, but he will not let it happen. But also, because this issue is all action, all the time, Federico Vicentini really, and I do mean really, goes off in this one. There are some banger panels in this one. You have Misty saving Tiana and Genki, and they kick the shit out of some drones, while Spider-Man and Rabble battle it out in the rain with some of the best dialogue in the run so far. It all made for an epic issue. Now, we don't know what happened to Rabble. She's MIA at the end of this issue after an explosion takes out her and Miles, and he wakes up with his family in the hospital, and Misty gives them keys to a new apartment. At the end of the issue, Agent Gao recruits Scorpion for a job. So that's the first 5 issues of Cody Ziglar's run, his whole setup to this whole story. I've given my thoughts on it, and I'll add a little bit more towards the end of this video, but let's get into the red goo. Okay, so if you aren't familiar, don't worry, that's what I'm here for. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this story before we get into it, so you kind of know what's happening. So Cletus Kasady himself is just a soul within a nanotech and symbiote hybrid thing called the Extremebiote. Yes, I know. Very clever name. Like, it just never ceases to amaze me with these goo freaks. Anyway, basically, him and Carnage are not together. Carnage is off in space. Cletus Kasady is on Earth with the Extremebiote body type thing. And the reason for that is because this other serial killing maniac, who is a serial killer himself, loves Carnage, but also was kind of saying to Cletus Kasady, yeah, you're kind of really nothing without that symbiote because it's kind of got all the power. Without it, you're powerless, right? So he took that personally because he's a maniac and a loser, and now he's back on Earth doing the thing that he always does, and for the most part doesn't really change. But I mean, there's some added wrinkles here, I guess, that he's got going on, but we'll just get into it. How about that? Let's just start off with Carnage Reigns. This book starts off with Carnage wreaking havoc in Miles' city of Brooklyn. This being the second time he's dealt with Kasady, and he's left a mark in Miles' head. Miles is shook to the point where he's making jokes to distract himself from the fact that he's terrified, like me watching a horror movie. On the streets, Agent Gao is on the scene with Scorpion as backup. Miles enters the building, but it's completely lifeless, or so he thinks. Suddenly, the lights come on, and there's a whole diner filled with people. Then Ken, sitting alone, calls him over for a chat. But when Miles' guard is down, Cletus strikes. After some struggling, Miles does manage to get away, but damaged. That's when he sees a lone survivor named Dominic hiding from Carnage. Gao's men march up the building to find Kasady, but are, of course, as good as dead, even with Scorpion. Miles and Dominic do get to the rooftop, but of course, Dominic is a symbiote too, and Kasady takes over his body to get the jump on Miles. And just as Miles is getting overpowered, Scorpion saves him. Before they can even catch their breath, Kasady turns into the Extremebiote and stabs Scorpion. Scorpion's life is on the line, so Miles does the one thing he knows to do in a situation like this: hit him with the Venom Blast. Which at first just looks like a really hard punch, but it actually ends up overpowering the arc reactor and causing a massive explosion on the rooftop, and that's where this issue ends. Now we go back into Miles' story. This is Spider-Man Miles Morales, issue number 6, written by Cody Ziglar. All right, we're gonna pick up the pace a lot more with these issues because there's not too much to establish, and really, these issues aren't actually that dense, which is why the content in this video about them will also not be that dense, just so you know. This issue starts off like a normal Miles issue with him journaling about the events of the last issue leading up to this new storyline, which feels like some weird lack of oversight in communication between writers, but let's keep up the pace here where they're not. Miles and Scorpion find themselves deep underground after the explosion, and Scorpion has no idea what he wants to do here in terms of teaming up with Miles to get to safety or stopping Carnage on his own for his mission. As they bicker, 2 firefighters are found beneath the rubble. Miles, like a hero, goes over to help, but Scorpion won't let his guard down in case Cletus wants to sneak attack them again, which, also seems smart, but Miles is a hero, so can't really do that. As the water pours in, threatening to drown them all, Miles and Scorpion devise a plan to basically blow up the retaining wall and get them to safety. It ends up working, only for Agent Gao to arrest Miles when she has the perfect chance to do so. But of course, Scorpion was right about Cletus posing as a civilian, and one of the firefighters turns out to be a symbiote spawn. Miles is of course shocked at this. Fortunately, he doesn't have to do anything more since Gao called in the rest of her Cape Killers group of hired supervillains, including Electro, Taskmaster, and Hightail, to handle the red goop. Seeing how powerful Kasady's become, Gao takes advantage and forcefully recruits Miles to the Cape Killers, giving him the choice of joining them or going to jail. Now into Carnage issue 13. Cletus has to fix the arc reactor burning a hole in his chest, so he and Ken head to one of Tony Stark's buildings to find him and a way to save him. Stark himself is not there, of course, so Cletus is going to force some poor scientists to put him inside a massive mech. Since he knows people are going to be coming after him on account of him never being subtle about what he's doing, he turns to Ken and turns him into a Stark symbiote hybrid to fight people off while he's being fixed. The Cape Killers and Miles are luckily right on their ass and get into the fight. But they're too late because, of course, the scientists couldn't work fast enough and Cletus' suit is fully powered up, and enough to shrug off a venom blast like it's nothing. Not only that, but now he's plugged into Stark's network, and he can start possessing people all around the world through technology. Hope you're keeping up. Let's get into Red Goblin issue 5. We're almost there. Normie's brother Stanley is possessed by Cletus and attempts to kill his mom Liz while she's distracted. But Normie saves her and hears Cletus talking through the phone. As all this is going on, the streets of New York are being possessed by Carnage into committing mass murder on one another, all the while Cletus just tries to justify it to Scorpion. Also, real quick, look at this art. Bruh. It is hilariously inconsistent and just bad. Anyways, Gal releases Scorpion from Kasady's grip. Normie goes down to the street level to help out and runs into Miles worn out from all the fighting. The two have to deal with Ken being controlled by Cletus, but Normie discovers he can absorb the Carnage symbiote, and the two find a way to rip him out of the suit and out of the control of Kasady. This pisses the mass murderer off, so he sends all the people he's possessed to attack them both. But reinforcements arrive with Stark Sentinels from Kelvin Hang, and this basically completely pointless, poorly drawn issue finally ends. In Carnage issue 14, the Cape Killers are now trying to get back up to Stark Industrial Headquarters to see if Normie can eat Kasady, while Hang has his Sentinels use nanotech to eat away at the symbiote that controls people through the network. They don't last long with Kasady though, as he's way too overpowered for them at this point. Now the Cape Killers are almost at the building, running from a mob of possessed New Yorkers who are climbing up the building. As Normie points out, "Are you seeing this?" Yeah, I see a bunch of contextualist blobs. Yeah, I feel like somebody ran out of time here. I kind of feel bad actually. Anyways, Miles and the Cape Killers reach Kasady. As Normie tries to absorb him though, he is tormented by the thoughts of Kasady, eventually draining him completely, and they all have to get out of the building. Now, while this was happening in somebody's basement, a bunch of incels who are fans of Carnage get symbiote-infused Stark tech, courtesy of Kasady. He rounds them all up to fight with him. And finally, after all this, Tony Stark has decided he should probably do something about all this carnage. Now this is back to Spider-Man Miles Morales issue 7. Things are starting to get vital. Kasady and the Extremebiote are on a whole nother level now, with Cape Killers scrambling to do anything resembling survival at this point. Nothing seems to be hurting it at all. Electro drops Taskmaster and gets the help of Miles to supercharge her and give Kasady everything he can take. And he takes it very, very well and actually stabs Electro, taking her out of this one. Taskmaster still wants a piece and fires a rocket which ends up missing and hitting a building, causing Miles and Hightail to quickly save the people from falling. Scorpion is the next one to fall though. Spider-Man and Hightail now running for their lives with Scorpion as they try to save everyone around them. But then finally, a miracle! An Avenger has showed up right in the nick of time when half the city has unalived itself. Hey Spidey, I see you got yourself a little Carnage problem. Timely joke, Tony. People are dead. Iron Man gives Kasady a beating he didn't expect, and it looks like he actually may have him down. But of course, he doesn't. Now he's mad, and so he takes it out on Miles by stabbing him, and Miles is dying quickly. Kasady is taking time to regroup, so Tony puts Miles into a badass life support system. Thankfully though, we are in the final issue of this story, the final issue of this terrible, awful, boring, nothing saga where Miles got dragged away from his main story. We are finally at Carnage Reigns Omega, with a book cover of the Extremebiote that looks nothing like the one we got in the book. Stark now has Miles, Hightail, and Scorpion to help him finish off Kasady. Their plan is to shred the red goop up before it can even regenerate and expose the Extremebiote enough to get Iron Man himself inside and land a killing blow. Carnage, fighting them all off on his own, calls on his possessed New Yorkers and suited up incels for backup, while Gao circles the skies with Ken just sitting there, being an annoying edgelord. Normie wakes up with enough energy to help slow down the mob and jumps into the fight. Iron Man and Spidey fight off the incels, and Ken sends the helicopter crashing down to the earth on top of them. And for some odd reason, because Ken is just a weird character with basically no real meaningful purpose, he says what got this whole thing started about Kasady being lesser without Carnage, and that he should have to fly out into space and find the symbiote. But Kasady has had enough and takes the goop back and unalives Ken. And for some reason, Ken is still alive in the hive mind of victims in this weird cringy thing. And he still reminds him that he's nothing without the symbiote. I just want Ken to leave. Like, what is he bringing to this, man? Miles is trying everything he can do to slow down and stall Kasady as Stark charges up, but nothing is hurting Kasady at this point. Miles is exhausted. Thankfully, it's given Stark the time he needed, and he nukes Kasady to hell. And all is well, aside from the mass grave that Carnage just made in the middle of New York. Miles loses the suit, but thankfully the nanotech is helping him heal. He goes back to his family, who is safe and sound. Oh, and Kasady is, surprisingly, not dead. And we are finished with one half of Miles Morales' story in 2023. Let's just talk about mainly the Carnage storylines. You've already heard my thoughts about the first 5 issues. I'm actually going to start off with this whole, scientist helping an evil villain thing, because here's the thing. Think of it like this. Okay, for example, you have a car, maybe, right? You don't really know too much about cars. You might know a lot about cars. You probably know more than me. But the point is that most people don't really know a lot about cars. Or maybe even, let's say, a phone, actually. I actually used a cell phone, so I know people don't actually know that much about phones. And I still know that much about phones either. Regardless of me not knowing that much about phones, but knowing more than most people is that when you don't know anything, you kind of just trust people because you kind of have to. You're at the whim of the people helping you, right? So, this whole thing with him being like, oh my god, I thought he was gonna kill me. Yeah, he will kill you no matter what. So, maybe the better idea here is to kind of, slow him down and just do your best to, convince him that, you're doing everything you can, and, even if he feels pain or something or whatever, that you're oh yeah, no, I'm totally fixing you, dude. No, you just lie to him, right? I mean, obviously, easier said than done when you have this alien cyborg mass murderer that everybody knows right in front of you. I know fear can do a lot of things to people, but I'm just saying, it's just kind of really, this happens every single time. These guys just oh yeah, no, I'll just quickly make your suit for you to make you even more deadly and kill me faster? What? Hold on, that makes so little sense. Somebody step up to the plate here and just be hey, maybe if we just, don't actually fix him, the heroes will notice this unsettled fucking idiot jumping one of the biggest fucking corporation's headquarters, because he's a fucking moron, and some superheroes will show up and he's at least not going to be so powerful that he'll kill them all and our families. What the fuck? But no, of course, they just couldn't help themselves. They just had to make it, fix him so fast. Even though they also, by the way, they admit in this story that they don't know what they're doing. So how the fuck did you fix him so fast then? I just think that's flawed. I think that's a little flawed. I don't know. Let me know what you think of that. Maybe I need to suspend my disbelief a little bit more. Oh, and then we have the art from a couple issues that I mentioned with Fran Gallen and Federico Sabatini. And listen, I do love stylized art, and these two actually do have some great stuff. For whatever reason, maybe they were just rushed. And by the way, guys, I do know that in this industry, writers, authors, editors, they're all rushed. The deadlines these people are dealing with is just insane. But the truth is you do still have to be critical. I mean, and also I am just poking fun. All these artists are so much better than me. I just want to be clear about that. I just think a lot of artists, and also too, we do know this, right? A lot of artists would love to get their hands on a cool, really graphic character like Carnage or Venom, right? Because that's kind of their whole thing, right? Todd McFarlane basically made them he made them so cool looking and everything, right? And they've been impossible, I feel for people to not want to get their hands on and try and create something cool, especially with their own specific art style, right? And I think anybody who does take on these projects is gonna be really good. You have to be really good to take these on. But a lot of this stuff, it just didn't hit. It didn't really work. It has to be, like, this stuff has to be so big with Carnage, especially because, you know, he can morph his body and stuff, and in this case he's half a robot and all that stuff, right? It's just, there has to be so much going on. And then also too, you had like the panel that I showed you earlier where like Normie looks down and it's like, oh my god, do you see that? It's like, yeah, like I actually don't see anything. Like, wouldn't that be the time, like if that's written in the dialogue, to really make something really graphic instead of just like you just like painted there? Like, I can't see anything. I mean, it probably would be cool, but I have no idea what the hell Normie's pointing at there. Vicentini did have a lot of great artwork, and as usual, some great panels in general, some awesome action and everything like that. He's just always on point. I know, I will say this, I don't know if he's necessarily perfect as far as his style goes for a Carnage-specific book, because I don't think, like, not to say he doesn't do a lot of detail, but I think his type of detail doesn't work for Carnage. That doesn't mean that he's a bad artist. You guys know I love his work. He's awesome. I just don't know if he's perfect for it. I do think, however, that he did do a great Carnage symbiote dragon. I thought that was really awesome, although it did kind of look like one of my favorite Digimon from when I used to watch that show as a kid. Regardless though, it looks cool still. Also, I always find it funny when writers try to do this social media memeing stuff where they try to do like their kind of Reddit pages or Discord pages, kind of like chat, where they're doing like the slang and all that stuff, the internet slang. And it's just like, I swear to God, the blue checks on the site formerly known as Twitter would not say stuff that is so robotic and so cringe. And you know, what really does piss me off though, ultimately, is just like, when I heard about this, I was like, man, really? Like, Cody Ziglar was just getting going. He was just making some awesome stuff with Miles. And now it kind of feels like you just like wasted however many issues. Like, that whole thing was like 7 issues. It was 7 issues long, guys. And obviously some of that's taken in the span of a couple of months anyways. I do know that, but it's just like, why? And Cody Ziglar, like he did, in my opinion, out of all these issues, his were the best. And it's like, wow, like maybe if, like, because I mean, fatigue obviously sets in too, right? It's like, I just want him to be saved for the Miles main run, because that's what he should be doing, and that's what he should be working on, is expanding Miles' world, because he is doing a decent job of that right now. I mean, my gripes aside, I think he's doing a very, very good job. But aside from Carnage being a frustratingly bland character, and I do think we are going to see a little bit more of Carnage and Miles, the one thing he does provide him is kind of an OP villain, because Miles, as I've said many times, is just so ridiculously overpowered. Like, man, like, people just can't do anything with him. But that's, I guess, the one cool thing with Carnage, is that Carnage is kind of like so overpowered that Miles struggles with him a lot of the time. He's like actually like pretty helpless against him in a lot of cases, because his spider sense also clearly does not go off either, just like Peter's, when he's around the symbiotes. And I guess the other good thing too is because, you know, Miles might try to pull punches with the, you know, smaller villain that he's afraid of hurting. With Kasady, he doesn't have to do that, because Kasady's dead, so he can hit him as hard as he wants and he can still do it, and it doesn't even matter. So in the smallest ways, Carnage is kind of an okay villain for Miles, because he's the one villain that's like just so on another stratosphere of power that like he can't really just handle him so easily, whereas like almost every other villain is like at risk of dying when they fight Miles. But all that being said, as I was reading these, like, the stories really just sucked the life out of me. And part of that too is because there's really just not a lot in them. Like, I really did not struggle to keep things out. Like, they're really, like, if you've read these two, you know, like, there's just not a lot in these pages. Like, the story moves kind of slow for the most part in a lot of them. Like, the writers aren't really having to do too much here. They're kind of just like breadcrumbing it and then breadcrumbing it, and then, you know, there's just a bunch of action. And so, like, there's really just, these stories are just very bland. Like, they're just so plain and boring, if we're being real about it. I know, like, because some people look at these stories and they see, oh, look at all these cool colors. I'm like, hey, listen, I love comic book art as much as the next person, but that only gets you so far. The only thing that was like really a struggle for me was like keeping up to date on everybody coming in and out with all the cameos that were being made with, you know, Normie, and getting up to date with what Carnage is doing and all that stuff. That was like the biggest hurdle for me, is just keeping up to date with everything and then trying to make sure you guys had all the proper information, to be honest with you. And although Miles did do this, he did try to save people, obviously the firefighters and Dominic and stuff like that, which is great. I feel like, you know, superheroes, like the main thing that they should always be doing at the core is saving people, not just fighting villains, but saving people. And when you have this guy literally possessing people at like just unaliving people on a mass scale, it just feels like very tone deaf when like Tony comes in and just like, haha, I'm just gonna quip and do all this dumb stuff. It's like, okay, like that works sometimes, but not when like there is so much, you know, carnage, no pun intended. Like, you can't just come in and be like, haha, you see, you got a problem here, buddy. You got a carnage problem. It's like, that's so stupid. He just like, he was stabbed like several times. He's almost lost his life several times. Like, what? His family could be dead. They also happen to live in New York, man. Like, it like, see, that's why it's hard to suspend disbelief, like to a certain degree, because it's like, these guys should probably be running around saving people a lot more than they did. They only did it like one point when the whole city is like dying. I guess like you could argue, oh, well, they're so in fear of their own lives. Sure. But heroes in that way, I can suspend disbelief and just kind of be like, yeah, actually, they should be more worried about other people than themselves, because that's the whole point of them. Their sacrifice is literally unreal. But anyway, that is the end of my recap, part 1 at least, of Miles Morales, the year 2023. There'll be more to come in part 2. Until then, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss another video. Check some other videos out if you like. We got some Batman videos, some Kevin Conroy stuff. That's one of my favorite videos I've ever made, actually. And I will see you guys in part 2, so don't miss it.